Guys, what's going on? Hello and welcome to Cereal at Midnight. My name is Heath, and in this episode, I want to talk about how everything is so long right now. Movies are longer than they've ever been. Streaming series are so long. They're decompressed. They're not just long in terms of episodes and seasons, they're also long in terms of how long the actual episodes are. Stranger Things, Season 4 is a perfect example for this. All of the episodes are the length of a movie. I have literally got a stack of movies that I'm trying to get through, and they're monster movies from the 50s and the 60s and film noir and stuff like that. They're not new movies, but this stack of movies, each one of these movies, every single one of them is shorter than one single episode of Stranger Things Season 4. So in this episode, here's what I want to do. I want to talk a little bit about where I'm coming from. I know that I may come across as old man yells at cloud, but that's okay because this is how I feel, and I gotta say it. I've been feeling this more and more, and it just continues to become a bigger issue for me. Let's start with movies they're longer than they've ever been before. We've always had long movies. You go back to the history of movies. There have been 2-hour movies, 3-hour movies. There have been these long presentations to pack in value for the buyer, right? For the ticket buyer. But since I think it's 2019, I actually saw a news story on this. Since I think it's 2019, studios are combating the decline in ticket sales at the theater with bigger experiences. So the movies are longer than they've ever been. Statistically speaking, there are more movies that are over 2.5 hours than ever in the history of movies before. Right now, more movies percentage wise are over 2.5 hours than ever before, and I'm really feeling it. And sometimes those movies deserve it, but most of the time, I'm going to say 99.99999% for me, for this guy, those movies do not justify that running time. They're just bloated, and somewhere in there is a good movie. The Batman is a perfect example of this. Somewhere in that 3-hour cut, there's a good 2-hour movie, maybe a 2-hour and 10-minute movie. But it's so long and it's so bloated. And the structure, if you want to know all my thoughts on The Batman, there's a review at CerealAtMidnite.com. You guys, it's crazy to say this, but the Morbius movie that the internet decided was the worst thing ever, which is actually not that bad. It's okay. It's not that bad. That's a glowing endorsement for Morbius, right? It's not that bad. I'd rather watch that than the Batman because it's like 1 hour and 42 minutes long, and you just go and you have your experience and you're like, all right, what's for dinner? I don't need to spend 2.5 hours or 3 hours with Morbius. Give me 1 hour and 42 minutes. It's funny because I also wrote up a review for Morbius, and it's one of the most circulated things that I've ever done. Lots and lots of people read my Morbius review. Everything is just so bloated. I think that filmmakers in this current marketplace, in this current world, are losing the ability to tell a concise story. And part of it is because they want to give value to that buyer. Part of it is because movie audiences want big. They just want big. If you're paying, what is a movie ticket price right now? $12, $15? If you're paying that per ticket plus refreshments, you want to feel like you got your money's worth. I think that's why a lot of people go to the movies and then they come out kind of let down, is because it has to deliver this. It's not just a night at the movies now. It has to deliver this experience that justifies what you paid for it. So movies are so big, but I really feel like we're getting further and further away from just this pure storytelling. It's one of the reasons I love older movies and even older TV shows and things like that, is they just kind of get to it. You watch all these noir movies from the 40s and the 50s, even the movies of the 70s. They were still doing this in the 70s, where you just get in, you tell your story, and you get out. So many of these movies are like 60 minutes or 70 minutes, 75 minutes. So in the time that it would take me to watch an episode of Stranger Things, most of them 1 hour and 15 minutes. The finale, what is it, like 220, something like that? I mean, good Lord, you guys. Now, listen, I know that it was like a 13-hour season, and I think that's comparable to other seasons of Stranger Things, but it's the way they've done it by shrinking it down to 9 episodes, so that all these episodes are just so packed full of stuff, but they're not packed full of plot. There's so much talking. Now, see, here's where the old man thing. Like, I'm a middle-aged person. I'm Gen X is what I am. I was born in the late 70s. I'm Gen X. I think a lot of the younger generations other than me don't mind spending lots and lots of time with characters regardless of what's happening. They talk about The Office. For me, The Office was a great 4-season show that went way too long. Cheers, way too long. All these shows, like, I'm the guy with the 4-season theory, right? I think that every TV show has at best 4 wonderful seasons. After 4 seasons, all the character arcs have been developed, all the relationships have been explored. The cast starts renegotiating their contracts and it starts to decline. Now you're watching this and you're saying, but what about Seinfeld? Or what about, some people like to bring up Star Trek The Next Generation, which I don't think had a single great season. It has good seasons with great episodes in them, but lots of bad episodes. We have Tasha Yar in a garbage bag too. Very hit or miss. So for whatever reason, I am wired for economy. I want economic storytelling. I want to feel like my time is being used well. I want to feel like the person telling me the story has clearly thought out the beginning, the middle, and the end, and that they're not wasting my time. Because in the time that I could go watch a movie from 1958, whatever, and it may not be the best movie ever, but it's going to have a clear beginning, middle, and end. People worked on that movie. The cast showed up for that movie. It's got a script that has a complete story arc. I'm wired for that, probably because that's what I've grown up with my whole life. The streaming generation, which I am not a part of, the streaming generation has a whole different set of expectations. Binging 13 hours of a TV show in one day, I could not imagine that. I can maybe watch 2 episodes of a show in one day, and then I'm like, okay, let's move on to something else. Part of it is generational. I absolutely think that this is generational. But it's a little bit concerning to me because what are the next 5 years going to look like? You know, it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse, because the reason that the streaming companies do this is because they're counting the clicks. They want the subscribers come in and they monitor these things based on how many people are clicking and how long they're watching. So if you can hook an audience with an episode of Stranger Things, or what other streaming shows should we even name? I mean, there's so many of them. If you can hook an audience for 45 minutes, that's good. But if you can hook them for 85 minutes, that's so much better. So that's how they're tallying content now. They just announced Ethan Hawke, I believe, is who is running this, is doing a biography. I saw it was like Paul Newman biography, like the last movie star. It's about Paul Newman and his wife, and I was like, well, that sounds great. And they're like 6-episode series. I was like, what? No, that's an hour-and-a-half movie, or maybe a 2-hour movie. That's not a 6-hour or however long it's going to be. They're wiring these things. They come to creators that come in out like, hey, in the 90s, Quentin Tarantino, like, I got a movie. I got these screenplays I want to direct. Edgar Wright comes through the door. All these great actors come through the door. You have all these opportunities for new filmmakers and new talent to come in, and they go make a movie. You got an idea for something that exists outside of the box, outside of the bubble. You go make it. Now, the studios, Netflix, all these people, Sarandos, they're like, well, let's take that idea. That's a very good idea. Let's take it and let's break that into 8 parts. And by doing that, you have immediately lost the urgency that screenplay had in the first place. You've turned it into something else. You've turned it into a serialized story that it was never meant to be. And for me, who has grown up with all of movie history, you know, I grew up in a time, you know, during the 80s. I like to say this a lot. This is my line. When I was growing up, you could see Mr. Ed on one channel, a Humphrey Bogart movie on another channel, the Ninja Turtles on another channel. All these things, all of movie and TV history coexisted on that dial at the exact same time. And because there weren't hundreds of channels, it was easier to find things than it is now. Things weren't getting drowned out. So I'm the last generation that grew up with all of movie history like laid out before me. You know, watching 30s movies, you know, on the Late Show or on a Sunday afternoon. You can't find things like that anymore. Now it's content that's being streamlined and funneled directly into the audience. And so many people that I see do not mind longer content. They're fine with it. They're like, well, yeah, what else was I going to do? There seems to be more tolerance for long, decompressed TV shows or streaming shows than movies. Like, people don't want to sit down and watch they don't want to commit to, I see it a lot with old movies, because I talk a lot about, when I say old movies, I mean probably older than me, you know, let's say 70 and earlier. People seem hesitant to commit to some of that stuff, but they'll sit down and watch episode after episode after episode of a TV show that just kind of snail paces along. And I don't know, man. Everything is just too long. It's just too long. Filmmakers are losing the sense of urgency in their scripts. It's part of it. There are good longer movies, but they're so rare. They're so rare. I believe that filmmakers they hold the material to be so precious that they can't make the cuts that they need to make. And so you end up with a bloated movie that needed to be cut down. Too many ideas for one movie. And the series, of course, way too many episodes. I watched I'm not even going to name what it is, because people can feel like I'm picking on them when they like something that I don't like. And I don't talk about what I don't like here. I tend to spend most of my time talking about what I do like. But I watched a series. It was a 10-episode Apple TV series. And it ended, and I was like, wait, nothing happened in this entire 10 episodes. Like, it spanned a couple of days, and there was no closure whatsoever. And I was like, wait a minute, what is this? Again, probably should have been a movie, a 2-hour or less movie, but I don't know. The market has shifted, and I know that probably anybody who's watching this that is 25 and under, you probably don't agree. But it's such an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing that's happening in the media right now, where all of our stories are being stretched out. They're being bloated. They're being made into these huge, monolithic, these just massive, in the budgets of like small nations. And the stories are just smaller than they've ever been. They're so insignificant. They feel like this little germ of an idea in the middle of it. But that's just my opinion. I think that things are too long. I want to know what you think. Of course, I know some of you are going to agree. Some of you are not going to agree. But this is an opportunity for us to talk about it. Do you think everything is too long? Let's continue the conversation in the comments below, guys. Wow, this was totally unscripted, totally off the cuff. I had no notes, no outline, and I just talked non-stop. Had a lot to say about it, apparently. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Take care. Until next time, I will catch you later.